Chapter 27. Mrs. Lathib has a talk with Gertrude about her behavior in the house. She speaks to men who laugh and speak carelessly, and Mrs. Lathib tells her that she shouldn't do that. It is not right, and it will cause pain in the long run for Kamalu. Mrs. Lathib says that the pregnant girl will be fine because Kamalu is like a father to her, but she is worried about Gertrude. There has been another European murdered by a native who broke into a house. Everyone tries to hide the news from Kamalu, fearing he is too frail to take it. After hearing a woman explain why she's becoming a nun, Gertrude tells Mrs. Lathib that she wants to become a nun too. She thinks it will take away her desires for men. Mrs. Lathib advises her to think about it. Gertrude tells the girl that what she's thinking of doing, which is becoming a nun, and asks if the girl would be willing to take care of Gertrude's son if she were to become a nun. The girl agrees. Gertrude promises to stop talking carelessly, showing her looseness. Chapter 28. Judgment Day in the case of Absalom Kamalu. The judge reviews his thought process in the matter and basically says that the female witness can't be trusted, Absalom can't be trusted, and the servant who identified the third guy, Porphyry, could have been mistaken. So, Absalom's cousin Matthew and the third guy, Porphyry, are set free, but Absalom is not off the hook. Even though they don't believe his statement about the other two men involved, they believe his story about committing the crime. The judge believes he intended on killing Arthur because he came in the house with a loaded gun. Absalom is found guilty of murder. He reaffirms that he only killed Arthur out of fear, but the judge condemns him to death by hanging. Absalom falls to the floor and cries. There is a custom that blacks and whites don't enter and exit the courtroom on the same side. The white man from the reformatory breaks that custom to help Simangu carry Kamalu out of the courtroom. It means much for him to do that. Chapter 29. Absalom marries the girl, but it is a very solemn occasion. They treat each other like strangers. Kamalu can hardly find words to say to his own son. Kamalu promises to take care of Absalom's child. If it's a boy, Absalom wants to name him Peter, but he doesn't have a girl's name picked out yet. Absalom begins telling Kamalu where his possessions are so that he may provide something for his son. Kamalu is upset that his son must die, while his nephew and Porphyry can still live. They are still in jail because of another crime, but they will not be hanged like Absalom will be. Absalom falls to the floor again and sobs. He admits to his father that he is afraid of dying. All Kamalu can do is hold him and tell him to be of courage. In the next section, Kamalu goes to say goodbye to his brother John. John says he is doing a good thing by taking care of Gertrude, her son, and Absalom's wife. Kamalu asks what John is going to do about his own son. John says he is determined to bring him back to where he is. Kamalu then asks where John's politics are taking him, to which John becomes offended. Kamalu warns him that the police are waiting for the right time to arrest him for the things he says in his shop. Kamalu lies to his brother and says that he heard a spy was sent to deceive John. John said, "Yes, such friends who deceive." Kamalu lashes out and says, "Well, my son had two friends who deceived him." John becomes very angry at the insinuation and kicks Kamalu out of the shop. Kamalu feels embarrassed that he gets kicked out and ashamed because he didn't mean to get angry with his brother. All he wanted to do was to tell his brother to not let power corrupt him, but Kamalu's anger got the better of him. In the next section, we see Harrison saying goodbye to the Jarvises. He tells Jarvis that he's glad Absalom will get hanged. Justice has been served. But he also says that the court should not have let the other two go. Jarvis doesn't really say much. When John drops Jarvis off at the train station, Jarvis gives him £1,000 to help continue Arthur's work in their club. What a huge step. Now we know Jarvis has been affected by learning about what his son believed in. For a man who accepted the customs of segregation, this was a huge step to start supporting the fight for the integration of blacks and whites and coloreds and, all the different nationalities represented in South Africa. Now the last section of chapter 29. Simangu has a goodbye party for Kamalu at Mrs. Lathib's home. He praises the good nature of Kamalu and the kind nature of Mrs. Lathib. Mrs. Lathib's friend says a long speech praising everyone too, and Simango has to ask her to stop because she's taking way too long. Simango tells everyone he will be retiring to a community, giving up all worldly possessions. He gives Kamalu the money he saved over his life and is glad to do so. Kamalu is moved to tears. Simango simply asks for prayers in his new endeavor. Kamalu goes back to his room and repents for lying and starting a quarrel with his brother. He decides that he will write a letter to his brother later. In the morning, when it is time to begin the journey home to Nutshani, Gertrude is gone. The boy and the clothes Kamalu had bought her were all that was left in her room, but Gertrude herself is gone. And that ends Book 2.